I am so honored to participate in this inaugural Gender and Development Forum, which serves as an excellent complement to the discussions and negotiations on the UNCTAD 4-year work plan also underway. My lightning talk will try to address this very involved topic at bolt-like speed. Let's start by acknowledging that governments have widely benefited from analyses of the factors that perpetuate structural inequalities through various prisms, including race and class. Less widely used is the gender lens, which is, however, extremely important if we are to understand and challenge structural inequalities in order to deliver on the SDGs, and in particular, SDG 5. Governments in the Caribbean have been working to advance gender equity, and I am proud to be part of one that introduced the National Policy and Action Plan for Gender Equality, is working on stronger legislation to address gender-based violence and sexual harassment, and more broadly, to mainstream a gender perspective into all current and future policies and programs. Ladies and gentlemen, the critical starting point for gender mainstreaming must be gender analysis. That is to say, we can only mainstream to deliver good outcomes through critical understanding of the socio-cultural roles ascribed to women and men and the consequential differences in access to socioeconomic and political power. It's therefore an indispensable tool in the design of development policies and programs. I'd like to highlight just a few areas which would benefit from a proactive repositioning of gender analysis. Education can be viewed as the most critical building block of our societies. Whether in the public or private rubric, the majority, if not all our children, pass through our school systems. They are our largest social catchment area. Boys and girls learn differently, and the impact and outcomes of teaching strategies can vary widely. Even pre-pandemic, in many of our societies, and particularly in the Caribbean, we've been reaping high levels of male school dropouts at the secondary level, resulting in low male populations at the tertiary level. There's also been a great gap in participation in subjects identified as critical for future-proofing our societies. And in that specific context, training in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM, requires a shift to ensure inclusivity and equal access in traditionally male fields, as well as a general expansion of expertise if our countries are to be developers of content and technology, as well as consumers. Here in Jamaica, in addition to the establishment of a multi-stakeholder commission charged with making recommendations for the complete transformation of our education system, we've launched a program to encourage more girls to pursue STEM subjects. Deeper gender analysis in education could support further adjustment of teaching methodologies for boys and girls and address both sides of the equation. So firstly, unpacking factors which have made STEM traditionally unattractive to girls on one hand, as well as the structural inequalities in various sectors that employ students of STEM on the other. And secondly, ensuring that teaching and training engages both males and females from the primary to tertiary and vocational levels. This is all in fulfillment of SDG 4, which stipulates that quality education is to be of equal benefit and outcome for girls and boys, of course, with knock-on socioeconomic benefits. Another area for repositioning is that of MSMEs, where significant opportunities lie for building businesses and empowering women. MSMEs hold great potential for employment and growth. So government policies driven by gender analysis should therefore aim to support the inclusion of more women in business. As efforts are made in this regard, policies promoting increased access to capital, as well as financial inclusion and literacy, must also encourage women to formalize their entrepreneurial skills and assist them to take advantage of e-commerce and digital trade platforms. In our own experience, for example, Jamaica recently launched the Women in Entrepreneurship Support Project to provide capacity building, technical assistance, and financial support to women-owned SMEs, particularly in youth and rural demographics. To round out this issue, it's critical for us to recognize that in societies with large percentages of female-headed households, the massive socioeconomic benefit of focus on this area is clear. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to also look at how gender analysis would be helpful in the area of trade. Recent World Bank studies show that when countries open themselves to trade, women's share of wages in the manufacturing sector increased by 5.8 percentage points on average. Furthermore, when women are employed in sectors with high exports, they are more likely to be formally employed. Formal employment means better job benefits, training, and job security. Several positive indicators. We therefore commend the ITC, the International Trade Center, on its initiatives through their Women and Trade program, which seeks to increase the participation of women entrepreneurs and producers in global value chains and to ensure that they enjoy greater economic benefits from participating in international trade. Taking a look at CARICOM briefly, we can note that the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas envisions through the COSOD, the Council for Human and Social Development, the creation of policies and programs across CARICOM to promote the development of women and youth with a view to enhancing their participation in economic activities. The COTED, that is the Council on Trade and Economic Development, which I chair, is charged with assisting member states to design policies to support industries such as export promotion, financing, incentives, and technology policies. I'd like to suggest today that there needs to be a greater convergence of these mandates if the Caribbean is to ensure that a gendered approach effectively crosses the bridge between the social and the economic. This must, of course, be driven by gender analysis. As we now have the very first female CARICOM Secretary General, perhaps this will be more of a possibility, noting, however, the reality that we only have one female head of government and one female foreign minister. By now, you must be wondering, how has Minister Johnson-Smith not mentioned the pandemic? I agree. A presentation on this matter would be woefully inadequate and even incomplete if it did not look at pandemic response and recovery. We can start with a more narrow focus on employment. An ECLAT gender analysis concerning the effects of the pandemic reflects female unemployment in Latin America and the Caribbean at a troubling 22.2% in 2020. Progress made across the region in many countries has been reversed by COVID-19. In a lightning talk, I clearly can't cover this fully, but let's recognize that Caribbean states include the most tourism-reliant countries in the world. Unavoidable COVID risk management measures left countries closed, airports without flights, hotels empty, cruise ships dormant, and economies in crisis. Of note, the services sector predominantly employs women, especially at lower levels. In Latin America, 60% of the persons employed to the accommodation and food services sector were women, while this was 62% on average for the Caribbean. When expanded to consider those sectors reliant on tourism and hospitality, such as agriculture, and the families involved, the sheer scope of the impact of the pandemic is revealed. One would therefore hope that as much as possible, governments would recognize that support for women would have to be an important component of their responses intended to cushion those most impacted and those most vulnerable. In Jamaica, for example, we have confirmed that just over 60% of the beneficiaries of our COVID allocation of resources for employees care program were women. To a great extent, the pandemic has thrown out many, if not all, pre-pandemic paradigms, exposed weaknesses in policies, systems, and infrastructure across the board. Will anything ever be the same? Will we look at our systems to protect women and children from violence in the same way? I hope not. Programs like the Spotlight Initiative will be critical to build capacity. Will education remain the same? Unlikely, but let's make sure we include gender analyses in the development of new paradigms. Will business be the same? In some ways, but massive focus on digitization driven by pandemic responses might provide greater opportunities on the other side, including for women if the analysis uses the appropriate, yes, gender lens. As indicated earlier, this should support more women in trade as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we have so much more to do to ensure that recovery has a gendered lens and takes into consideration matters such as the extent to which working mothers have fallen behind as a result of increased domestic demands as a result of the pandemic. Matters such as safe childcare, for example, must assume greater importance. If we are to truly build back better, stronger, and smarter, gender analysis will be critical to the crafting of policies as countries move from response to recovery. This would be necessary to ensure even more effective programming that's resilient against future health and economic shocks. As we reposition, I'd also like to emphasize the importance of national data. Even though there are some aspects of gender analyses which will apply across the board, it is critical that domestic realities be highlighted and mapped so that the right solutions can be found to deliver the best outcomes. Gender disaggregated national statistics are important, as they also support effective gender analysis in policymaking. Reliance on averages will not always achieve the best results. Women are not a homogeneous grouping, nor are our national experiences. So gender analysis must take account of this. In closing, I'd encourage us to continue to use all the tools at our disposal to analyze long-standing and evolving social inequalities. Repositioning gender analyses as the heart of pandemic recovery programs will be critical. Let's build back better, stronger, smarter, and more balanced. I thank you for listening.